Flex blocks, both of which have been big hits, I think, with both students and teachers. It's been really nice to have the Flex block as an opportunity to make up quizzes or tests or get extra help or just get some of your homework done. I know I've been taking advantage of that. Basically, everyone's just really excited to be back in school and engaging in school activities. I know Mr. Bishop sent out an email the other day asking for just 3 to 4 volunteers from each grade to be a part of his principal's cabinet, and he said within a day he already had over 100 responses. So I think that just kind of goes to show how excited everyone is to be back in school and being able to have school events and stuff like that again. So that's all I have, but now Brian's going to fill you in on what Student Council's been up to.
So this year we are broken up into 3 subcommittees that we as a group in a whole voted for. So the first subcommittee is Outreach, which is focused on publicity and fundraising. So this is the subcommittee that I'm basically in, and our goal is trying to get more in touch with the student body and update them about what we've been doing through the student memo, emails, and our Instagram. One thing we've been working on is creating a bi-weekly newsletter that will go out to the entire student body, updating them what we're doing as a student in student council. They've also been creating a website. We have also been creating a website, as well as that we will have all the newsletters and other information in this website, so it'll like connect students with what student council is doing bi-weekly. And the second subcommittee we have this year is volunteering. So in the volunteering subcommittee, they've been brainstorming and planning community service events in the upcoming fall, and currently they have one scheduled, a trash pickup ends sometime in October. And the final subcommittee is School Spirit, which focuses on school events and increasing spirit. So they're currently trying to make plans for pep rally and have been drafting one proposal for an outdoor pep rally and one proposal for an indoor pep rally. But we're still waiting that to get approved, and they've been also looking into spirit days and brainstorming ways to increase participation for that. So that about sums up what we've been doing as in student council. But if you have any questions, Jesse and I will be happy to answer them.
Anyone want to jump in?
No.
I will jump in. I am so happy you guys are here and able to update us directly on what's going on with students. The pep rally, how awesome to be able to have that back this year.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. It's funny because, I think freshmen and sophomore have never really seen a pep rally, so we're excited
Right.
for them to have that opportunity experience, even if it's outdoors.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, good.
I was glad to hear feedback on the start time change and the flex block, so thanks for sharing that. Interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
It's great. It's great to hear from you guys. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
so much.
Tanya.
Well, we're very happy also to hear about the response to principal's cabinet, because we have a policy tonight where we might be looking for students.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
We'll need to
Great.
stick around for that.
Perfect.
Good timing.
Yes, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
You too.
You.
Great job, thanks.
So that moves us into the superintendent's report.
Okay. All right, so this is the superintendent's report for September 23rd, 2021. The 3 things that we'll be covering tonight are updated enrollment numbers, the Hopkinton High School addition, it is looking fabulous. And then the COVID-19 update along with a COVID-19 test and stay report. So once again, you can see that these numbers are kind of holding steady right around, 70-ish students. Today, or yesterday, whenever we printed this, we were at 69 students. And I know that people are wondering, where are we in terms of kids who are being homeschooled? And so we did a little bit of research on that. Today, we have 18 students who are currently on record as being homeschooled in Hopkinton. And then at the start of the 19-20 school year, we also had, interestingly, 18 students who are being homeschooled. And so what we really think is that we've kind of found that equilibrium, and we may have a couple more students who leave us, and what we did was we looked at the 19-20 school year, and a few students left, through the course of the year. But I think that we are kind of status quo, where we would typically be if we were in a sort of typical school year. One thing we have not yet done is to sort of reconcile the books. So what will happen right before we do the October students report is we will actually go through all of our class list to ensure that if there are students that we realize, oh, that student isn't coming to school, and then we kind of overlook the fact that that was a student who had indicated that they would be leaving us, say, to go to a private school. We'll pull those students out. So there should be very few of them. So that number might go down just a smidge the next time we talk about it, but I think when we see the numbers in early October, you're gonna have very solid numbers, because October 1st SIMS gives us excellent data. You know, our books are really clean at that point.
One question. In the 9th grade, we actually have negative current registrations. Is that normal for us?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we had talked about is that going from 8th grade to 9th grade, you'll typically lose some kids. Some kids just want a different high school experience. And so that's pretty frequently a good sized number, the 8th grade to 9th grade jump.
Okay.
I think that you also have been looking at how do these exiting and entering numbers compare to previous years, so you can see whether that's a difference. And I think what you're saying here is that that 9th grade number is kind of typical.
It
You
is.
see that in many exiting.
Yes, and one of the other things that has happened, I mean, if you went back a few years where we had those crazy enrollments of like 100 to 200 students, that number would be very different. But, I mean, well, you'd see that many kids exiting, but you'd also have had so many more kids come in. Like, in those years, I think that we were thinking that there were some families who wanted a middle school, high school experience, some families who wanted a high school experience. So the numbers coming into grade 6, or the numbers coming into grade 9 were a lot larger. You know, so that would, you know, the offset would be kind of different at the 9th grade.
Okay.
Dr. Kavanaugh, would you say it's accurate to say that this seems to indicate that in the near term, this year, the projections that we had from Dr. Wagman were pretty accurate? I mean, because we budgeted about along those lines, right?
Yeah, the budget number is at the bottom, and it was 72.
So it seems like, I know when we got those projections, and they looked pretty frightening, you know, as you look down, 10 years, people said, oh, well, that can't be right, or at least for the first year, we're tracking pretty closely, it looks
Yes.
like. And it looks like the earlier grades are seeing generally bigger bumps. You do see a few in the high school, but like certainly grades 1 and 2, those are very large bumps.
Yeah.
But kind of what, if I remember the shape of Dr. Wagman's projections, not out of line with like sort of the shape of what he said. So
Yes.
for me, as we're kind of doing all the campus planning work and looking more at that data, this is an early indicator that at least close in, it was fairly reasonable.
The projection is, yeah.
Okay.
One thing we need to be careful of, though, is that we need to remember that last year was really an anomaly. So if we were expecting a lot of kids last year, we weren't getting a lot of kids last year.
Yeah.
And we certainly had an increase of students last year, but not the increase we expected.
Yeah.
All right, so here are the pictures now from the high school edition. Georgette and I were in the high school, and so we thought we would take a quick trip through. On the left-hand side, you can see that that classroom is fully done. Yes, there's cardboard boxes in the middle of the picture, but the electrical is there from the ceiling, the univent is set up, the whiteboards are in, the television is installed, and look at those beautiful, glorious windows. I mean, that is just a beautiful classroom. I mean, it was goosebumpy. It was really a beautiful space for learning. The contractor right now, we are in the final phases. They are securing a site contractor so that the outside can look as beautiful as the inside. So if you were looking at this classroom from the inside, you'd think, wow, this is great. But if you're out in the bus parking lot, you think, ooh, we need some soil and grass seed. Those are planting, that would be what you were thinking. And then the other thing is that the contractor would like to invite the school committee, if you are interested in just going for a quick tour one day to take a look at how those rooms
Love
came
to.
out. It would be really nice, I think. I think you will. And you know what was interesting, when we used to look at the drawings, I used to think, oh, is that gonna be awkward getting into those rooms? But that hallway that you go down to get into the rooms just seems perfectly natural.
Great, great.
That's great.
It looks wonderful.
Beautiful. All right, so,
I'm sorry, I was expecting all of them. So in terms of dates, right, so the dates have slipped, we're now into the middle of September, the addition's still not finished. What is the current projection?
I think the addition is pretty finished. It's the site work now that is kind of holding us up. So I really don't know what the date is for occupancy formally, because it will all depend on the timing of that site work.
Is the site work necessary for the building permit or for the occupancy or whatever you need?
It is because the site work kind of cleans up where that ingress and egress is. So, you know, for a safe passage of
Yeah.
students in and out of that door. And as you know, with rain and everything continues to become, you know, while rain doesn't bother interior work anymore, it does bother exterior work. So getting that final site cleaned up, finished up, regraded, you know, pouring concrete, pouring asphalt, you know, all those things become delayed every other day that we get rain. So it becomes an issue, but yes, it is a safety for the occupancy,
Right.
for the students to be able to pass safely.
Okay.
And I assume for fire reasons, you can't have that door blocked, correct?
That's correct, absolutely
Okay.
not. You would not get a occupancy
Okay,
just based on that.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So, did you say a date?
I didn't say a date.
Right. Okay.
It's difficult, you know,
Yeah.
as you know, every other day we get rain. So
Okay.
it's been trying on everybody's schedules.
Thank you.
Okay, COVID-19, where are we? To date, we have 3 cases. We have had 3 cases. I don't want you to think on this particular day we have 3 cases. That would not be accurate. So since the start of school, we've had 3 cases. And we are keeping our dashboard up this year so that if families want to click on that dashboard, they can see, you know, where those cases have been. And, you know, there's sort of a historical timeline there, so if you just scroll around on that dashboard, you'll be able to take a look. I can tell you that 1 was at the middle school and 2 were at the Marathon School, and you'll see that on the following slide. But all 3 of those cases have involved unvaccinated students, because all 3 of them are students who are under 12 years old. We have seen no in-school transmission, so that's something to feel very positive about. Our teachers are constantly reminding students, wear your masks properly, and I will say that we've had parents get in touch with us to say, you know, I've seen video, I've seen kids getting on and off the bus, I see kids in the playground, or I shouldn't say playground, but in different places, and they're not wearing their masks appropriately. And, you know, one of the things that our teachers and our administrators are constantly saying is, you know, this is how we keep an Elmwood Eagle safe, make sure you put your mask up over your nose. I mean, so those are like our taglines, we say them again and again. And just the other thing is, you know, students who see something should say something. So if your child's riding the bus and you know that there's a kiddo who gets on that bus every day and takes his mask off, you know, our assistant principals really do, you know, work with the kids so that behavior in school is transferred over to the buses. And so we can work with that if we hear about it. In addition to the dashboard, families can also visit the DESE website, because this is a year that, you know, we're also keeping our dashboard in sync with the DESE website. If you are wondering what our DESE website looks like, our local website looks like, the dashboard looks exactly as it did last year. One of the things that parents will frequently ask is about what kind of testing is accepted. So if you see that your child has got the sniffles, and we say all the time, please, if you see anything that doesn't seem quite right, your child is lethargic, running a low-grade temp, any of those things, please just have your child tested. Rapid antigen tests are accepted for us, so if you get a rapid antigen test and it comes out negative or positive, we say, okay, it's negative or positive. PCR tests are obviously preferred. And then we just need to let people know that if you go down to CVS and you buy that over-the-counter at-home test, that's not a test that qualifies according to DESE. So that's not a Hopkinton rule, that is a Department of Elementary and Secondary Education rule. All right, what's going on with Test and Stay? I think the last time I presented, we indicated that our nurses didn't even have login information yet with CIC. They now all have login credentials, they've been able to get into CIC Health, and there is a 3-hour online mandated training, so they are in the process of getting that done. It is something that they probably need to do outside the school day, because while you're being the school nurse and children are losing teeth, or, you know, coming in from recess with skin knees, and coming in for, you know, all kinds of insulin treatments or those kinds of things all day long, it really precludes being able to concentrate on a 3-hour training. But they should be done with that very shortly, and once this program is up and running, you know, there are lots of different models, but for us here in Hopkinton, the testing is going to take place each morning at each of our 5 schools. So there will not be a centralized location, but rather a student who is considered a close contact will actually go into school and be tested by his or her or their own school nurse. A classroom close contact, some families have wondered what that definition is. And it is defined as an individual who is exposed within 3 feet to a COVID-19 positive person in the classroom while both individuals are masked for at least 15 minutes during a 24-hour period. And if they close contact through test and stay, test negative each day, they can come in, get tested. If they're negative, they stay in school, hence the title. But if you have, and some parents have asked about this, they'll say, well, what happens if my child is vaccinated and is a close contact? Can that child come right into school? And the answer is yes. But if you want your child to be part of the test and stay program, even if that kid is vaccinated and is deemed a close contact, we will absolutely do test and stay for those families as well. And there are some families, who have concerns about other children at home who are, immunocompromised or other family members, so that's something that we are certainly willing to do. And that's it.
So the classroom is the 3 feet masked. What is it? Is it different in the cafeteria?
Yes, because they're unmasked in the cafeteria, it's 6.
Okay.
Just as if it would have been in the past.
I have a couple of questions. Are you getting good participation? I would imagine parents have to opt in to allow their children to be tested, right?
They do.
In those situations, and are you getting good participation on that?
I think we are. We may be up to about 900 students right now. And I guess if you think about it, about 50% of our kids are not vaccinated. So that would be about 2,000 students.
Right.
So we were about halfway there, I would say.
Right. And then other question is, like, last year I felt like the quarantine and close contacts was very disruptive for those quarantine students, and I'm really glad about this program, Test and Stay. But as you mentioned, it doesn't seem like it's fully operational yet. So and I like the way it looks once it's operational, but what does it look like right now? Like, what about those 3 cases? How many close contacts were there? And did anybody have to quarantine at home, and did they have access to the educational curriculum at home?
Only with the first student that tested positive did we have close contacts, and I believe that there were 7 of them. And yes, those students had to stay home for, I believe, 3 days, 3 school days they may have missed. And we did send schoolwork home, but there was no, Zooming or any of that kind of instruction that would have been directly delivered from a teacher in Hopkinton. Hopefully we'll be moving beyond that very shortly. In the other 2 situations, when we recognized that this student tested positive, the number of sort of requisite days before a student could take a PCR test to return to school had sort of passed.
Oh, okay.
Which in some ways is a nice indicator that even though that COVID positive person had been in school for a number of days, the disease wasn't transmitted.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so it's,
Yeah.
the virus was, that's a good thing.
There's still no transmission in school, right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
But I imagine you can't wait to just get it up and running, because we don't want to have more of these cases where kids are having to quarantine without direct access.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kathy Bain, who is our head nurse, is in meetings almost daily now, I think, with CIC. So, the wheels are really turning. They had sent us a shipment of, the test kits probably 2 weeks ago. But it's been very difficult to get our nurses into the portal and all of that.
Okay.
But it could be up and running next week if they have this 3-hour
I
training
am
to
hoping
do.
that that is the case, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Can I just ask, we're at the 23rd, and I think we had said that we were going to revisit our masking, and then, of course, that became sort of a moot point because the state is mask requirements. So have we heard any updates from DESE or the commissioner around the mask status yet?
We have not, and he had promised that he would be reviewing it around October 1st. But, even in conversations with fellow superintendents, we have not heard anything about whether the mask mandate would be lifted or not lifted. There are very often mentionings about percentages. So for example, if you had 90%, say, of your high school vaccinated, would you be willing to lift the mask mandate there? So I do think that will probably be on our October 3rd, is that the right date, agenda for our meeting, so that we can be looking at that, unless there is something that comes from the state that says we're going to be maintaining masks for another period of time.
Is there a Bessie meeting that people could look at, and that's kind of scheduled to come up to review this?
I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
question.
I feel like there was a Bessie meeting last week. I don't know how frequently that would come up.
Okay?
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, actually, I do have one more thing. I know that the town, we had talked about, going back to the slide that said that the antigen rapid tests are being accepted
Mhm.
at this point as well. And the town is doing those, is that correct, for people that, because I know testing is harder for people to access right now, looking through like the state facilities as well as through like CVS. There's often a couple days wait if you had a symptom that turned out not to be COVID. You'd have to be out of school without a test somehow.
If people call public health, I believe you can be tested there. We did have a little bit of a scare today at the Elmwood School. We had someone who had tested positive with a rapid antigen test, and so we were prepared to quarantine or to send our close contacts home. And then they were tested at public health with a PCR test, and that test came up negative.
So they have rapid PCR tests at the town hall?
They surely do.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on TV, but I guess
I don't know.
everybody knows now.
That's out of the bag.
Yeah. Anyway, public health is very helpful for us today.
That's great.
So I think we are-
Is that it? Do you have more to?
Nope, that was
Okay, I
it,
didn't want to
sorry.
cut you off, because what you have is always interesting and important. So that, go ahead.
Yeah, can I ask another question? I saw some news reports about MCAS test results this week by town. I thought maybe you'd say something about that, or do you need to analyze the data more before saying anything?
We will probably look at the data more, and typically what will happen is Mrs. Parson, the assistant superintendent, will come and give us our report. They lifted the embargo on Tuesday, the 21st, I believe. So yes, we certainly should have her come and have a conversation with us about where our MCAS scores were.
Yeah, I mean, it looked very positive, but it'd be interesting to hear some analysis on the factors that made it such in Hopkinton.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I think we're feeling good about our scores, Julie.
yeah,
Mhm.
thanks.
Great. So that brings us then into the school committee chair report. I don't have a lot, but warrants 22-007 and 22-008 have been approved, and they're in everyone's packet. And then payroll warrant S22006 has been approved, also in your packet. I did receive a little bit of, which I think actually went to everybody, communication very shortly after our last school committee meeting about the questions about test and stay, and questions about kind of what's going on with COVID-related stuff, so. But not a lot, knock on wood, it's been a little bit quiet. So hopefully things are going well for people. Do people have liaison reports that they would like to share? Go ahead.
Sure. CPAC will have a welcome to CPAC Meet the Director of Student Services meeting on the 19th of October from 7 to 8:30, and it will take place by Zoom. If they go to the CPAC website, they can find out more information. I'm also on the Bullying Prevention and Intervention Plan Committee, and we have met 3 times as a whole group. We've also broken up into smaller subcommittees to look at different sections of the policy. We'll be meeting again in early November, and right now we have a dream team of the superintendent, a couple vice principals and a couple principals, trying to cobble together something coherent out of all of the notes and suggestions we've made. It is a lengthy process, and it should not be rushed. You know, I think thinking about bullying changes so much from year to year that even the suggestions from DESE feel a little outdated at times. So I don't think this will come about into coherent form quickly. But we're getting lots of great feedback, I think, and we've had some good conversations about it.
Yes, the document at this point looks pretty jumbled.
Yes, yes.
But it's a lot of good thinking.
Yeah, good conversations.
Great.
On the Sustainable Green Committee, we didn't meet, but there is a community event on Saturday. They're meeting at 9:00 a.m. on the Common on this Saturday, the 25th, for a community-wide cleanup. So they're hoping for good participation from the community on that. And the other, I guess I'm liaison to the planning board too, with you as backup. Is that how we did it?
With
Yeah.
Amanda, I think is back up.
With somebody,
unfortunately.
okay. But I did not attend the most recent meeting, but there were some emails about the Campus Connector Trail. And I think that might go back before the planning board again. And it might be something we want to pay attention to as well, because it would be heavily used by students. So we might want to have an opinion on it, for example. Or at least input from our administrative team and building and grounds. So that's it for now.
Great,
I
thank you.
think I actually have to reach out to the youth commission because I haven't heard back since that one meeting we had, so I don't know if they've had meetings and et cetera, so.
I feel like they have not, but I can't say that with certainty.
The HOP Coalition, that's Hopkinton Organizing for Prevention, met this week, and I am happy to report that we have secured the Drug-Free Communities Grant, which is something that we have been working really hard toward. I'd like to say we, but I have to say Don Alcott and Colleen Souza and our consultant have worked like crazy. I mean, they have done 99.9% of the work, and it has been a long process to apply for this grant, which provides 3 years of funding, and it's designed to help us put in place the mechanisms and programs and whatnot to really create a culture of substance abuse prevention. Like, it's a prevention culture. So, you know, it's kind of wide open. I'm sure there's going to be a press release. I think the news just broke this week, so you can probably see that in the press. But that's exciting for the town, and the coalition is a real cross-section of public safety personnel and people in various leadership positions and parents and people who've been affected by overdoses and whatnot. So it's a really vibrant group, and the team is really energized by having had this win. This is a big win for the community. So I will also, the calendar subcommittee, I don't know if I reported this last time, we did meet, we have met, and I think our next focus will be on continuing the work and talking about how we get input from the community on the calendar, and that's something that Ms. Parson is heading up. I think that's it.
Anybody? Okay. So I just quickly, I know that the email went out about the select board meeting, joint meeting with select board and appropriations on Tuesday the 28th. They come up with the budget message that they will deliver to us, but as per the town charter, we actually all agree upon the budget the budget calendar, so we will be discussing that. Do you guys have a draft of what's been discussed in staff in terms of the calendar for the budget stuff? I know we did discuss it at one point over the summer.
We have a draft.
Okay.
Internally.
Internally.
Yes,
Would it be
yes.
possible to send that out to the school committee ahead of the meeting on Tuesday?
Oh, sure.
That would be
yes.
great. Okay. And then from there, looking to get together with the budget advisory committee, which would be the select board chair and the staff on both the school side and the town side, to try to, and the appropriations chair, who I think is going to be new. I think they have some new appropriations people coming on, so that is all I have. So that brings us then into additional lunch staff.
Thank you, I'll take that. You have a memo in your packet from Michelle Babin, our food service director, requesting to add additional staffing at Marathon, Elmwood, the middle school, and the high school. What we're seeing is an enormous increase in daily lunches being served in the kitchens. For example, choosing just one day, the middle school has an increase in daily of 148 lunches. Elmwood, 138 lunches. So the increase in the demand on the kitchen staff is through the roof, shall we say.
Can you clarify, you mean compared to 2 years ago or a year ago?
So pre-pandemic.
Yeah, okay, got it.
So these
yeah.
are numbers from 2019. So
Wow.
September of 2019 to September of 2021. This is the increase that
Thanks,
we're seeing.
yeah.
Is the thought that this is related to the lunches being free through the federal government?
It very well could be.
The town-
And that does play a lot into what's going on. I think having universal free lunch is a
Yeah,
very
agree.
good program. It's
I
good
agree.
both for kids and it's good for families.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of reasons. And we had a meeting with the food service staff today, and the end result is it's putting a tremendous amount of pressure on them,
Oh, I bet.
trying to get this food and feed kids appropriately. So this is a request to give them more staffing so that they can move kids through the line, prepare the food. I mean, they're close to running out of food on days.
Wow.
It's that high, the demand.
And do we have the same staffing level in lunch as we did during the hybrid model? Where
Correct.
kids- Okay, so that makes a lot of sense why it's so much bigger right
Yes.
now. Anybody else has any questions?
Do we have to order more food? Are we also having a food, supply shortage?
Well,
Or are we able to stretch?
the food supply shortage is in that you may be planning, and I'll just make this up, you may be planning on broccoli, but broccoli doesn't show up. So you have to swap and change your menu on the fly based on what you have.
Okay.
So it's not that food is not arriving, what you're ordering may not be what you're getting.
I got you.
Which seems consistent with what people are seeing in grocery stores as well.
That's
There are random
exactly it.
shortages of different,
Yeah.
hard to
You-
predict what it is.
You go, you wanna buy an orange and there's no oranges for 2 weeks.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, so menu changes are happening on the fly all the time because we
Sure.
constantly have to change based on what the inventory is.
So we need a motion?
We need a motion,
I will make that motion.
I will second the motion.
okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So thank you very much for bringing that forward. I imagine this will give them some much needed relief.
Thank
As
you,
well
yes,
as,
yeah.
the lines must be quite long to be moving that many kids through as well.
The lines are very long. We're strategizing on a lot of different things of what we can do. This is where you start to really see where the common areas that we talk about in each of the buildings being way too small.
Yeah.
So if universal free meals stays, which that is the movement, and our kids continue to eat this way, it's very difficult to serve them and get them through kitchens that are too small.
Yeah. Okay, that's a problem for another day.
Not part of this memo, just a fact.
But it's good to have on the horizon, because that does seem like between our growing enrollment and this, that we could be in for some longer term difficulty.
Right.
Well, I think it's, again, like as we go to doing the work that's gonna happen this year, I'm getting more confidence in what we're based, we knew that we had the study done, we knew there was a lot behind it, but the realities are proving it out. Because those studies did highlight all those common areas that, so that's good to know.
The building principals and assistant principals will tell us that because those lines are so long, if lunch is 25 minutes long, some kids have 22 minutes to eat lunch, but some kids are down to like 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And that would make children very nervous.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we extend the lunch period for them, but there's a lot of anxiety around it.
Right.
That should not be.
No.
Yeah, just to clarify on new building construction for schools, they do require some kind of ratio, like building the common areas like cafeteria for 50% higher than your current enrollment. So there is some growth built into the new schools, but at some growth rate that is exceeded too. Yeah.
Well, at the middle school, when that building was used as a middle school and a high school, there were 2 cafeterias in there. And then all that merged, and I'm thinking many of our other buildings have had additions added on with no ability to add on to
cafeterias.
Mrs. Rodman and I were in a meeting today with the MSBA, so they'll come out and do a sort of post-occupancy analysis of Marathon.
Yeah.
So I think that's really helpful, because the goal of the MSBA doing this now, it's sort of a new program for them, is to be better informed as they build other schools around the Commonwealth.
So that's.
Maybe that will eventually impact the formula that they use, which prevented us from being able to use our knowledge of the increased population due to construction that was master planned, because they only allowed counting of occupancy permits.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as we move forward with new buildings, considering the fact that these common areas have become such an issue, we tend to plan for new wings. Is there a way to plan for extension of common areas, placing them in ways that then we can extend the building outwards for those areas?
Yeah,
Because it feels like that's.
that's done. Yeah, that's part of the MSBA program
Okay.
too. I know to build bigger than you need currently, I think it was 50%, isn't it? A ratio like that
I'm
for
not
the
sure.
common areas, but also that they could be expanded.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But on the older schools, it could be challenging.
Right, yeah, no, that's what I was thinking, like the high school has the wing that we could expand, but it didn't necessarily plan for the common areas to be expanded, so that's why I was asking, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Food
The
trucks.
middle school now has 5 lunches.
It is just out of curiosity, when you say 5 lunches, does that mean 5 that are going like back to back, or does that count extra the ones that are happening in the auditorium?
No, 5 that are going back to back, so there are 4 minutes in between each lunch period. So a 25-minute lunch period, a 4-minute transition, 25-minute lunch period. You know, one of the things we've been joking about, although it's not funny, is that we'll have kids getting off the bus and eating, and then kids eating lunch and then getting on the bus at the end of the day.
Right.
That's what it looks
Serve
like.
brunch instead.
That's the kind of where we're going.
All right, so that moves us into the HVAC preventive maintenance award.
Thank you. So once again, you have a memo in your packet. There was an invitation for bid put out for the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning in August 25th, with applications due September 8th. We had an opportunity for vendors to take a walkthrough on August 27th. We had 6 vendors request the bid and 3 that actually submitted. So you can see the 3 submissions that we received: cooling and heating specialist for $115,200, Renaud HVAC for $199,055, and E&E Systems for $383,163. So references have been checked for cooling and heating specialists. It is within the budget, and as you know from procurement law, we are required to choose the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and that would be cooling and heating specialists.
Questions?
Can I ask a question? It's a big range. I was surprised that the bids are not, I mean, 115,000 to 383,000. That's a big range, so,
That's not unusual.
It isn't, okay. My other question was, I know we have to go to the lowest qualified bidder, were there any other sort of qualifications that, other than good references, and, I mean, what qualifications make someone a sort of qualified bidder for this bid?
Well, within the bid package, they had to have a certain number of years of experience and different things, you know, working in a school, so licensed, obviously, so, yeah.
So this vendor works in schools. I
Yes.
couldn't find a website for them. I was looking at Renaud, had like lots of schools. I was like, well, that's comfortable. So I wasn't sure because they just didn't have an online presence.
They do have.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was having the same concerns. I was looking at the range going, wow, and I know the procurement laws, so I know we have to go with the 115, and at the same time, I was like, so thank you for asking those questions, because they were definitely weighing on me.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, you see bids, it's not unusual to have that big of a spread.
Okay, would you have a motion?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Make a motion to accept the or to award, no, what am I motioning? Oh, to award the bid for the HVAC maintenance to cooling and heating specialists for the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Amanda, second by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Me. It is passed, so that moves us then into the superintendent's, we're doing the indicators, right? Yes.
Indicators,
Okay.
yes. Okay, so as you know, the superintendent is evaluated not only on goals, but also indicators. And what will typically happen is, there's sort of that self-assessment, why are you choosing what you're choosing to be evaluated on? And I think a few years ago, we had agreed that we would choose things from under different standards. So there are things here from standards 1, 2, 3, and 4. This year, I think you're going to see that it might be a little bit standard 1 heavy, which is, very much dedicated to, good instruction and good curriculum. And I think that we are in that place really because we're emerging from the pandemic and, we kind of want to right the ship a little bit. So I'll just quickly go through them. The first is standard 1A1, which is standards-based unit and lesson support. One of the things, and I know that you saw this in my goals as well, so the rationale here is that we're really looking to bolster our reading, writing, speaking, listening, and inquiry skills. We are looking primarily at the secondary levels, but we have had a lot of K-5 literacy work going on in the district for the past 3 years. It's sort of just finding its way, in that vertical kind of sense up to the middle school and high school. And really we have the data that we need to sort of say this is something that we want to work on. It does not mean that this would be the only standards-based unit and lesson support work that we would be doing, but for the purpose of my evaluation, that's sort of where I have chosen to focus 1A1.
Sorry, Carol, what is the -1, -2? Does that refer to your goal? Or,
No,
'cause I didn't see the dash numbers.
Right, the indicators would be the 1A.
Yeah.
And so if you see 1D1, this would be those elements under the indicator. So all of these things here, and I know we talked about using the rubric that just did those indicators, but I think I liked the language that had these elements outlined in them. So when it says 1D1, 1D2, 1D3, they all fall under the same indicator, which is 1D, but they are 3 different elements under that indicator.
So just to clarify, Nancy, because when we said that we were evaluating with the new revised, simplified version, so for our purposes, it would be 1D.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to so
Yeah.
this is really, like, it looked like a whole bunch, and we were trying, and
Yes.
you're supposed to only have like 6 or 7 or whatever, and now I'm understanding better that this is really one, from our language, it's 1D, it's one
Yes.
indicator.
And
Okay.
I think I tried to
The
just,
color.
you'll see that the color coding is all orange in that section, so it's all one indicator.
Oh, I see, I totally didn't get the color coding, sorry.
Sorry. So the 1D1 educator goals, and one of the things that the building principals and I are working on this year, there's a sort of standardized template that all of their goals are going into. And what's really nice is, it's the same template that I use, and so what's really nice about that is it helps us to see where their goals are aligned to the district improvement plan, to their school improvement plans, to the administrative rubric. And we even now have some of our administrators who are using shared goals, and I really like that very much. Student learning measures. The district, as you know, I think I've mentioned it many, many times, that we keep, I think, extensive student learning data, perhaps more student learning data than I've seen in school districts. And maybe that is, part of the secret sauce to learning success in Hopkinton. But I think now that we have this data and we are emerging from the pandemic, I really feel like we should be able to take a look at our kids and say who is still working sort of above benchmark, who's at benchmark, who's below benchmark. And using that data, I think what we can really do is to better our targeted instruction.
One question with this, so when I look at this, it feels very simplified. Is there gonna be like other factors that are gonna be taken into account, like, looking at demographics, making sure that we're not underserving certain populations or overserving, et cetera, internally, as opposed to like the state use of our data.
Yes, and I think we always look at, you know, that discrepancy reporting to see, you know, if there are places where, you know, minority or disenfranchised or other populations, you know, might be off. And, you know, thankfully, in the last few years, we have not been marked by DESE as a district that has a disproportionality. But yes, when I say that we have data sheets, our data sheets will indicate, you know, a student's MCAS scores, their STAR reading and STAR math scores. It will look at BAS data, QRI data, 3 or 4 different math measurements. It will highlight whether a student has a particular learning disability. If so, what's the profile of that student, whether the student is an English learner or not. And all of that stuff is kept in the data sheet, and it's all housed under one roof. I will say they're masterpieces. They're amazing, and so that has been one of the ways that we've been able to target instruction. So we'll be able to say that a kid with that particular profile, for example, might need this math intervention or that ELA work. And in the sort of aftermath of the pandemic, we have hired a lot of literacy tutors around the district using some of that ESSER money. So that even if these are, you know, 2-year kinds of positions, they will be there to, you know, bolster achievement. One of the things that, you know, I was talking with Ann Carver today, and we had a kid who came into 2nd grade last year who, and these letters won't really mean much to you, but was, in terms of his BAS data, you know, reading at a D, and by the time that student was ready to move on to grade 3, had gone to a K, which is an astounding amount of growth for a child. And a lot of that was done through using these literacy tutors in addition to getting LLI instruction, in addition to regular classroom instruction. So you can even layer sort of the integrations and things.
Thank you.
So can I just say something about the process-wise? So I think in addition to this conversation, if Dr. Kavanaugh picks an indicator, we have an opportunity at the mid-year check-in to sort of ask for evidence. I mean, the indicator is defined, it doesn't include what evidence. If we can decide if there's additional evidence we want to see to be able to evaluate that indicator, we can ask for that. And, you know.
Yeah, my question was more about the 3 levels are very simple. And so I was just trying to get an understanding of, okay, so this year maybe we're doing these very simple levels, and then next year we might make them more, or if they were actually much more complex than these 3 simple levels seem to indicate, right? Like whether there's a lot more data that's being considered than just like at, below, and above, right?
Yes.
So that's what I was trying to understand.
Oh, I can assure you they are far more complex than that, yes.
Yeah.
And maybe the next box down kind of gets at that a little bit also. So in addition to, you know, when we talk about having STAR, ELA, and math data, and alongside MCAS data and all of those building selected measurements, one of the things that we're hoping to do is to use that data in terms of, you know, budgeting and staffing and hiring, assignment of staff, professional learning, professional development, selection and purchase of and implementation of new programs. So all of that data we are hoping can be used to really think hard about what our needs are and make sure that those needs are being met. All right, social and emotional well-being. Obviously, with a new director of social and emotional learning on board, it feels critical to focus on an SEL indicator. Currently, our plan is to ensure that all teachers in every classroom are introduced to Tier 1 SEL instruction, meaning that the SEL skills and competencies are embedded into everyday instruction in every classroom. So that is where we are today, and I know that she's also working on introducing some restorative justice practices with the in the different buildings. I mean, primarily to start, we'll be looking at assistant principals and some of our school counselors, school adjustment counselors, that group of people to be looking at the restorative practices. Recruitment and hiring, obviously an ongoing goal. I've had this as a regular goal for a very long time. It's part of the district improvement plan. I think I've mentioned before that we are working with Jessie. Jessie put something out so that you can have sort of a 5-person team that works, you know, to look at different ways to practice better recruitment. And, you know, hopefully, maybe at the end of this year, if we looked at 4-year data, you know, where were we 4 years ago in terms of our faculty demographics? Has that changed at all? 2E, fiscal systems. This one is there almost every year, but with the community anticipating maybe a tighter belt alongside a belief that an override is not necessary at this time. Creating a fiscally responsible and educationally responsive budget is certainly going to be something that will challenge our team. And so navigating that this year is another one of the indicators. Community stakeholder engagement is the only one that I have under standard 3. And that one I think is a big one, because we'll be going from eligibility to feasibility with the Elmwood School building project, and we'll also be doing a whole district-wide campus planning project. I think, you know, that is going to require ongoing communication and, you know, engaging with stakeholders in the community. So that one felt like a very natural indicator to choose. And then the last one is 4D. And I think that 4D, continuous learning of staff, kind of goes hand in hand with standard 1. And so I feel like we are really going to need to think about what our teachers and paraprofessionals and administrators need to really bolster student learning, growth, and achievement this year.
I'm glad you corrected that 3A too, because it was confusing me.
Yeah, sorry.
that was gonna be one of my questions.
Yes, that
That's
was
why
just
I was
a-
separating. Okay, thank you. These look
So-
really, really good.
So there are 8 of those indicators if we're counting just indicators, not elements.
Does anybody have any questions? Anything clarified that?
I think these are great. Honestly, I like all the indicators.
Yeah.
These are great. They seem to align really well with your goals. The only other one that caught my eye, and I don't think we need to go any heavier in 2, was 2C, around scheduling and management information systems, because you have a goal around the work of the admin team, many of whom are sort of providing the infrastructure for the classrooms to be successful. So the scheduling, the transportation, the food service, the technology, whatever. So I didn't know if that was relevant to that goal. That was the only one that caught my eye. The only other thing I would say is, I think best practice recommendation is like 2 per standard, but I think given where we are in our focus, having it sort of front loaded on 1 and 2, standards 1 and 2 makes sense, so.
Yeah, I felt that way for this year at least. I'm happy to add 2C. I think we do have a webmaster coming on board, and so I think that might be.
That's exciting.
It surely is. Yeah.
And when will that happen?
She has been hired and I think just had to give her former employer like a 2-week notice. So
Okay.
she could be in as early as the end of this week, early next week.
Great.
Yeah. I think she'll be coming in next week because Mr. Ghosh and I have a meeting on Monday, sort of about her onboarding.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so it does not, I don't think, indicate in the agenda, but do you need a vote on these to indicate that we are in agreement with this?
You do have to approve them, and if you wanted to make that motion with the addition of 2C, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I would like to move to approve these with the addition of 2C.
Okay, so motion by Meg, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Leah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much for bringing these and for the incredible amount of thought that I know goes into these.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so that brings us down to old business. We have item old business A is policy JICB, student involvement in decision-making. This is a 3rd reading. I did not receive any feedback on, and I know that it did go out by listserv. I don't know if you received any feedback from the community.
We did not. And so this is the policy that we were engaging with our student council members
Yeah.
about tonight. In previous readings of this, I think we had questions about that opening paragraph. And I think our feeling about that opening paragraph was that student government such as student council and those kinds of organizations really fell under the purview of the school, not the school committee. And they are very typical for every school district, and so it was suggested that we eliminate that. What we hoped to focus on, I believe, was the school committee's interaction with students and then students' subsequent involvement in decision-making. So what you see here, you can see all the parts that have been stricken through. We took out the headings because we no longer needed them, because this is now just sort of one great big thought. And we did eliminate that last paragraph because I think that what it used to say has been integrated into what would become the third paragraph.
I like the simplified version.
I do
Yeah.
pithy.
Any questions or any comments from our policy, our fabulous policy working group?
I have a question. Did we get any did we ask for any input from, like, I know we mentioned it to the student council reps that were here tonight, but did we have a process to have them review this, or should we,
I
or?
really do
I
not
don't
know if it went out to the student body or not.
This, whether this to the student government or student council or something like that.
Was there, I remember the discussion being that Mr. Bishop would figure out how to implement that and then send out whatever his implementation ideas were to the students on top of the student council.
Yeah, we did talk to Mr. Bishop, and I wonder if he had one of his morning meetings where he meets with, you know, some of his student government kids, class officers or something, and presented it, but I don't want to say that I'm sure of that because I could be making it up.
That's all. I mean, since it's a policy that directly impacts how we engage or get feedback from students, it would be nice to
Yes.
have evidence that we did get feedback from the groups that represent them.
We could certainly send it to the high school students and bring
You
it
could
back
hold
on
it.
October
I don't know,
3rd. It's no rush.
I don't know if it's to all students or just a student. Yeah, I didn't hear anyone say that, yeah, definitely student council reviewed it and they like it or something, you know. I'd like to hear that at least, yeah.
So we could hold that off till the next meeting if that works,
don't-
just
yeah,
to know what the input
Yeah, I mean,
was.
if it's just me, let me know, but,
No, I think
Yeah.
you think it's a good idea if we
Okay.
have not done so already.
Just according to the policy as you edited it, written, the student doesn't have to necessarily be on student council to
No.
be picked for this advisory, right? Okay.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm just saying even change, especially given the changes in wording to that paragraph since the last revision, maybe there's a different opinion amongst the student body that they should, for example,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll bring that back at our next meeting. So the other policy we have here is policy IGD, which is curriculum adoption. This is a second reading. I also did not receive any feedback on this. I don't know if you did.
I did not.
Okay.
So the revised policy IGD is the one that you see beginning on the second page of what is in the packet. And you can see that when we brought it to you the first time, it was pretty super streamlined. And one of the comments that we had from the committee at that time was that the committee would hope that not only would curriculum adoption sort of reflect educational goals, but it would also reflect the values of our school district. And so we incorporated that into paragraph 1. In paragraph 2, you can see that we included policy and district improvement goals, because we do feel like that if we're changing our curricula, it should be in line with the district improvement plan. And then we also included the middle school program of study in that very last line, which was a third recommendation. But other than that, I think we've incorporated all 3 recommendations.
Yep.
I do want you to also know that I had Mrs. Carson, who's our assistant superintendent, read through this policy today, just to be sure that, you know, she was comfortable with it as written.
Okay.
Thank you.
And she is.
Cheers.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions? Are we, anybody feel moved to make a motion then?
I'd make a motion. It's only a second reading, are you okay with that?
I am comfortable, just particularly, I mean, as long as that
I'm comfortable, I
Fits
feel
me.
like the changes between first reading and
Yeah.
second reading were pretty minimal.
pretty minimal.
Yeah, and I think the other one is just so old,
Yeah.
even if we have to revise this again, you know, I just think it's
Yep.
time to.
Toss it
I would
out,
like to
yeah.
make a motion to adopt the new policy IGD as submitted by the fabulous policy committee.
Fabulous. Motion by Amanda, is there a second for that?
Second.
Second by Joe, all those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous and passes. And that brings us down to future agenda items. We do have a few that are outstanding that will be coming. At the next meeting, I am gonna bring back what we discussed over at our summer listening tour to kind of bring that
Yes.
together and have that. And we have a few others that are outstanding, but are there other agenda items people wanna make sure that we put in the queue to bring forward?
I guess the one that Amanda was asking about, you know, it's the 23rd of September. It'd be great to get an
Yes.
update on the state, you know, superintendents, sounds like they're meeting in the next couple weeks and to get, to relook at,
Yeah.
you know, the evidence since school opened with masks.
And I think that has to be at the next meeting regardless of what the
Okay.
state has done,
Yeah.
because we did commit that we would do this on a monthly basis, and now we're
Right.
gonna be into October, and then we'll do it again in November.
Yeah. I mean, I presume we'll have an agenda topic early October about the enrollment data as it settles. And I think swiftly on that, we would want to start talking about campus planning too.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yep, I agree with all of that.
And Nancy, let us know if we can help you with the listening tour notes.
Thank you. Okay, I will send that out ahead of the next meeting so that people have a chance to kind of look through and think
Thank
of
you.
edits for when we come into the meeting.
Yep.
That brings us to items by consensus. I don't even want to say how far ahead of schedule we are.
No.
All right, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Meg,
Second?
second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that brings us down to adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Meg, second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
In that we are adjourned at 8:05. Our next regular meeting is here on October 7th. So that, and we will likely have an executive session then as well, I would say.
Thanks for the heads up.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, have a good night.
Good night.
Thank